Hello everybody and welcome to today's Avast business webinar, which is all about how to overcome the biggest threats to your online business. And by that, what we're really talking about is cybersecurity and what you can do to protect your business. Now, we've got a fantastic panel for you today. We've got Patrick Plawner, who's the CEO of Live Shop Local Shopping, which promises to be a local version of Amazon for small business retailers that's coming to the UK. It's already launched in America. We also have our tech expert, who's Paul Fennick. He's a senior sales manager with Avast, who can talk us through the tech side of cybersecurity and cybercriminality. And then last but not least, we've got Philippa Phipps, who's the Cyber Protect Coordinator for the Police Regional Cybercrime Unit. Philippa's going to talk to us using phrases like Organised Crime Group, OCG. So this is going to be like as exciting as a webinar as an episode of Line of Duty. Anyway, hello everybody. I just want to set the scene first by talking about cybercrime and how it affects small businesses and the state of cybercrime today. So 1 in 4 UK businesses have suffered a cyber attack or incident, although experts believe the figure may be even higher for small businesses. And of the 39% of UK businesses that identified an attack, the most common way was into a business's computer network and through a phishing attempt, trying to obtain an individual's personal data. Nearly 1/3 of firms are suffering a cyber attack nearly once a week, which is a shocking statistic. And of those that have been hit by a cyber attack, 21% had a more sophisticated attack, such as denial of service, malware, or a ransomware attack. So you might be asking, okay, I'm hit by a cyber attack. The average cost of being hit by a cyber attack for a small business over a year is in excess of £8,000, which is a lot of money for most small businesses. And it's not just your small business that you have to be aware of. One of the really interesting stats that's come out is that only 13% of businesses review the security risks posed by other businesses in their supply chain. And we really want to talk about supply chain in this webinar, because when you think about it, your small business is only one part of the ecosystem, and the entire ecosystem is open and vulnerable. So I wanted to start by perhaps asking Patrick a question. Hi, Patrick.
Good morning.
So, Patrick, take us through all the different points in a supply chain.
Absolutely, with pleasure. So I prepared a slide to try to make it a little graphical for everyone. If we can load this up right now, that would be great. Thank you very much. So just to make this clear, the supply chain used to be this for centuries, as I wrote, looking a little different in the Middle Age. But this is really what it is. And what we'll be wanting to look at here is where are the points where this is going to be a little critical to monitor for your security. So this was great until now. It was working quite fine. There were some thieves in the house sometimes, but it was pretty secured. And then came something new about 40 years ago. You can go to the next slide. I will show you that. The new thing was, well, the internet. And the internet, like every new technology, is absolutely fantastic. It brings a lot of new opportunities, but also like in any new technology, there are some risks associated that, if they are controlled, are fine, totally fine, but if they are ignored, could lead to quite disastrous situations. So when we look at this, really, we want to look at the supply chain risk in the supply chain itself, meaning that it's not just you. As Tim mentioned, it's an ecosystem, and sometimes you can be the one who is creating the risk for the others. Sometimes it's the others who create the risk for you, and we'll look at that together. So this is something that we'll want to spend time a little today, and also analyze the critical points you need to be aware of and what you could do about it, as, of course, some people spend quite some time and energy to help you in this new internet connected world. That's
Okay,
it.
Patrick. So let's just drill down a bit deeper.
Mhm.
Where along those points in the side in the supply chain is the supply chain vulnerable to attack?
Yes. So for this one, I think I prepared for you a slide as well. If you can go to slide 3, that would be great. Thank you very much. And it's very important that everybody is really conscious about what everybody knows and what everybody is aware of. I think it's very, very obvious, and we know it and we take care of it, and the less obvious. So I wanted really to write down these different categories here to make sure that we set up the ground clearly. So the obvious is what everybody thinks about. Yeah, my PC, my tablet, sometimes my smartphones, my email I receive, the file I download. And of course, people think about their internet at work, their routers, their connections, and if they add somebody to the network. This is really kind of the obvious. And the danger comes, of course, from this area. Don't get me wrong, it's still very important to monitor, but the danger comes from what people think less about, you know. And the less obvious is really what people should really also concentrate on. So for that, it's the internet. So internet, as I said, is a fantastic opportunity for everybody, and we add a lot of devices everywhere. And they add a lot of great services like cameras in the shop that can monitor the customers and the employees, the printers, the doors, everything you can think of, even the toys, you know, we can add. But everyone needs to be aware that each of these devices is actually made of many programs that usually are controlled by the manufacturer. Many times they are not. And somebody with bad intention could absolutely either connect to these devices and eventually even watch you in your shop via the cameras, or even change the software in these devices to do a lot of possible different things. We also have your own employees that you need to think about, and we'll talk about a little later. The risk is not always from the outside. Actually, one of the top 5 risks in cybersecurity is actually your own employees. Sometimes they do it by mistake, by the way. They could just connect a device they didn't think about. And this device has a virus. It's not like they are all necessarily with bad intention, but there are a risk in the system. And also, probably maybe a bigger risk as well is all the pages that you know so much, you know so well, you trust so much. So you go to always the same website every day. And when you go there, you don't even think, you type your password, you press connect, and it's usually the same page you look at all the time. And there's a lot of advanced ways for people to actually either capture what you are typing to this website you are used to, or even fake some websites that if you don't pay attention to the top of the URL, the website address you are linking to, you may actually enter your details to complete different web services. Then you have the cloud services and websites that you have. These services that you use online, you need to make sure that they are well secured as well. It's not you, it's not your business, it's not inside your business, but it's cloud services that you use from the internet. And when you sign any service you want to use for your business, you do need to check that indeed their security is what you expect from anyone in your area of connection to be secured with. And finally, maybe one of the less obvious issue in this categorization is yourself. Many people say they are too busy, thinking about anyway it will happen to somebody else. It doesn't happen to me. You know what? We always take the car and say we never get an accident. When we work at any place with the internet, it's not going to happen to us. It's always somebody else until it does happen to us. And we also think in some businesses, and we work with quite many businesses, that some of them told us, anyway, what could happen to my business if somebody connects to my camera or even my PC? Well, a lot of bad things could happen, and just they didn't know about. So we try to educate them about the risks. And certainly after they understand the risk, they take very different approach to what they should do to protect their network.
That's absolutely fascinating, Patrick. I mean, the idea of somebody hacking into my business's CCTV system, that would never have occurred to me. So, Philippa, let's turn to you. Let's turn to the police expert. Who are cyber criminals? I mean, where do they come from? What kind of people are we talking about?
Morning, Tim. Right, so there's really a range of cyber criminals out there, in the UK, in Europe, abroad. It's completely worldwide, and it's a worldwide digital problem. So, for example, in the news, you hear about the nation state attacks, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, for example. And, as you alluded to at the start, the OCGs, the organised crime gangs. But actually, if we're thinking about small businesses and the things that small businesses need to be aware of, it's not them at all. They are persistent, they are sophisticated, they target specifics. They're not the people that small businesses need to be worried about. They need to be worried about the very, very low level hackers who are exploiting vulnerabilities in your software, your poor password management, exploiting human nature, by sending a phishing email with a malicious attachment that appears to be from your supplier or your customer or somebody that you frequently communicate with. You click on that link because you feel the source of the email, and you're inadvertently infecting your whole system, and can cause a lot of damage and destruction along the way. And going back to sort of your nation state and your OCGs, they're very politically motivated, and sadly, the people that it's the people that small businesses need to worry about. They're just about causing chaos. They're not financially motivated, and again, like I said, it's not about targeting XYZ business on whether they trade online or in a physical shop on the high street. It's not about that whatsoever. Like you say, it's around what operating system are you using, and exploiting the vulnerabilities found in the code there, because all technical things are made up of code, and there's always vulnerabilities within them that needs to be patched. So then that kind of comes onto the next point around the things that that small businesses can do to protect themselves from these very low-leveled, very low-skilled hackers out there that they need to be watching out for.
So, I mean, do you have any idea? Do you have any idea when it comes to small businesses what percentage of these hackers are financially motivated as opposed to those that just want to create havoc?
In terms of these low-level ones, the majority of them are just around causing, chaos and havoc. Like I say, with a ransomware, you are looking at more of your organised crime groups, and yes, ransomware is a issue for small businesses. But again, we'll kind of come on to that a little bit later, because the prevention measures are exactly the same as all the others. But yeah. That's something that they definitely need to be looking out for.
Okay. So, just Patrick, just turning back to you, it seems to me that enterprise level businesses, bigger businesses, are aware of cybercrime, and they've acted on it, and their defences are pretty strong. Is that why these bad actors are turning to smaller and smaller businesses, do you think? Because they're less protected, less aware?
It's a very good question. So I prepared a small slide for that as well. Tim, if you can just load it up to really extract the situation here. And it's a very simple situation. The bigger company you are, the more money you have, the more budget you are, and you have also you have a team dedicated to security because you have so much to lose as well. So of course, it's much harder for hackers to get into these companies, and the reward is really much bigger. But said that, because of the democratizations of tools to attack computers, any kid 10 years old or less can download a tool just for fun. They have nothing to do today. It's a summertime. They just want to create some story to tell their friends. They're going to load few software, and they're going to start to attack the smaller companies who have very small budget for security, if any. And of course, are an easy target for hackers. I'm not sure I would call them even hackers. I think they are just Mr. Nobody knows who can access very simple tools. Imagine that when you have a small business, in terms of cybersecurity, it's like your windows and doors are open days and night with nobody watching. And you have all these kids in the streets who have nothing to do, who see your shop completely open, lights on, and they see all these things they can do inside. And guess what? Out of all these kids, there are some malicious ones, or just kids who behave like kids who think it's funny to do some damage. But they are there, and because you are so open to the world, because you're so unprotected, and the software, it's not that they spend time to look at you. The software, they started in the morning, they go to play football with their friends, they come at night. The software tells them automatically, because it browses all the IP address, let's say in London, it tells them automatically, this shop at all these hacking points. This shop has all these hacking points. And then they can decide, based on the report from the software, which one is more interesting to attack. And yeah, guess what? They are going to do that. So everyone is at risk. There is no safe haven. I really wanted to emphasize that. And of course, the more you leave your internet shop open at night, as I call it, with all the windows and doors open, the more you have chances that something bad will happen to you. And when it's said to you, it's not just to you and your business, it also then impacts everyone who is connected to you. And some surprising stories happen when somebody would actually start with a small shop and via the supply chain could access a major supplier because this small shop had a connection to the supplier open on their PC. And guess what? The kid was able to open a remote connection on your PC easily, like you wouldn't believe how easy it can be if you're not protected. And after that, simple remote connection to one of your giant supplier, who of course will not be too happy that because of you being, I wouldn't say careless, but at least not informed enough or not aware enough of the risk, enabled this kid to go into their system. So yeah, the risk is actually for the big companies, the risk is sometimes not at all for hackers coming directly to them. It's from hackers going to a smaller fish who is not really a big risk as you could think of, but because this small fish is connected to them in the supply chain, then it becomes actually the biggest entry point and the biggest risk for this big company.
Okay. I mean, Philippa, I mean, you're on the front line of this. In your work, do you have any examples of a small business that's been hacked and what effect it had?
We've actually got one currently that is an ongoing investigation within the Eastern region. An organisation in our region, it's a company that provides security and logistics services for the construction, aviation and the security industries. So on the 24th of April, they received a notification from their managed detection and response provider that identified a potential compromise on their systems. And it was then detected by staff the next day. And they then received communication on the 25th that they were being held to ransom, all of their computers locked down, they wasn't able to operate. So their files had been stolen, and all of their files had been locked. So that they call it double extortion, when they steal and then they hold it to ransom, because what they will say is, we will sell, publish the data of your sensitive client, customer data, etc., your business critical data. How is that then going to affect your business? You may have a backup of that data and you can restore, that's fine, but what damage is that going to do to your business, knowing that all of your data has been stolen and is going to be leaked and sold on? The organisation's clients included operators of critical national infrastructure, including airports, ports, petrochemical industry sites, and the energy sector. This company had more than 250 clients and had been operating for over 30 years. And they had a large historic client database. They are currently, they have managed to restore. However, as I said, with all the information of their clients that has been stolen, it's a case of being a sitting duck. The organisations, their suppliers, their clients, it's very, very likely they're going to start receiving, lots of phishing emails trying to get into them, and then they become the target because of this breach in the first place. So, yeah, watch this space for this one. Like I said, we're now in July. This is still under investigation. So it's like I said, it's looking at the bigger picture in relation to the supply chain and how a breach on your company can affect all of your suppliers, all your clients, etc. And this company's been operating, for over 30 years. It's going to be interesting to see how the reputational damage, the reputational damages on this organisation in time to come.
Absolutely. Now, Paul, I just want to circle back to something Patrick mentioned, which was terrifying, that a 10-year-old boy can get his hands on software that can completely disrupt your business. How easy is it to hack a small business these days? I mean, do I have to be some kind of cybercrime coding genius?
Thank you. No, it's disturbingly easy, really. I mean, you can even outsource it if you want to. There are, you can go to there are ransomware as a service providers. You can go off onto the dark web and tell them how much you want to make, and they take a percentage, and it's fantastically organized and marketed. There's phone support, there's marketing, why we're better than other ransomware providers. Even sort of net promoter scores at the end of it. And this is actually real, it sounds like scare tactics, but it's real. I used to show this on demos. If you don't particularly like a company, if you don't like the competition, you can actually go to sites and pay for a service that will effectively hammer that site, that will basically cause so many connections, so much traffic to that site that effectively nobody else can access it. That's called a denial of service attack, or a distributed denial of service attack. If you Google the terms stressor or booter, you'll see again that this is actually all real stuff. Again, depends on how much you want to pay. And as Patrick was saying, anybody can go out and find suites of hacking tools. They're all easily available. They're all freely available. Kali is probably the best known one. Kali, the Hindu goddess of death. That's download it for free, make a nice little bootable USB stick, you boot it up, there's a nice menu there, you choose what you want to do, you can hack networks, you can steal passwords, you can shut machines down, it's just really easy. So basically anybody anywhere can hack, obviously as long as they're prepared to face, possible prosecution.
Right, well, that's all right. Well, thank you for reassuring me. I feel even more terrified. So, okay. And it seems to me that another complication is, of course, the pandemic, and the pandemic has changed how we all work now, flexible working from home. How has the pandemic and working from home change the threat landscape, in favour of cyber criminals? Paul, that's for you.
Yeah, hybrid working's here to stay. The Office of National Statistics said, about 42% of people still plan to work from home at least part-time. That percentage has actually increased since the beginning of the year. And no matter what the employees say, sorry, Elon, and those other guys who are trying to force people back to work, they're just people, if you're working for a company that doesn't offer working from home, then people will just leave and go somewhere else. So remote working, hybrid working in itself is not dangerous. It's just that sort of potential lack of policy and control of that remote environment, and that sort of slight difference to your mindset when you're working from home. Obviously, you're sort of slightly less aware, possibly. So obviously, there are all the sort of logistical questions of, how do I, as an admin working, say, in Oxford or working in a London office, how do I physically deal with those remote devices? They're probably still corporate assets mostly. There is a little bit of people using their own device, but generally they're corporate assets. I'm still responsible for them. How do I know they're not full of viruses? How do I know the software's up to date, the applications are up to date? How do I know that they haven't shared 1 million personal files on Dropbox? That sort of thing. The usual one, again, having done my time in admin, the usual user question of, something's come up on my screen. Can you fix it? How do you physically see that? How do you remotely access those devices? But the security issues are around generally because you've got those systems off your nice, safe castle wall, secure network. You've kind of extended that estate. You've got more stuff to secure, as Patrick was saying. You've got more windows and doors. Your stuff is more visible for hackers to see. You've got more chinks in your armor to attack, and as Patrick was saying, sort of supply chain attacks, that kind of remote access kind of thing is a main target. If you need to get to those remote devices, quite often you use something called RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. That's been massively exploited at the moment. It's actually seen in about 50% of ransomware attacks. They use that to transport the malware over to the devices. If you are remote but you need to access your company resources, you need to securely get into your corporate network. You generally use a thing called a VPN, virtual private network software. That also has its issues. There are security issues around that. There are ways, free ways to actually secure those things, but there's been a lot of interest this year in technology called Zero Trust. It's very expensive for small to medium business, but if you kind of look into the way that works, you'll get some ideas on how to sort of secure all that. I mean, the good news is exactly the same security steps apply to remote working as to office working. All the steps that we're hopefully going to go through later, passwords and making everything up to date. But we've seen a large uptake in cloud-based security management system rather than having something locally on your network. If you're using something cloud-based to provide your security, to provide your antivirus and your backup and your patching and all that sort of thing, then it doesn't matter where those devices are. As long as they've got an internet connection, you get the same level of security whether you're in the office or at home or in Starbucks or whenever. So that's a good fix as well.
Okay, and with home working, we all know that how we use our laptops has kind of smushed between the personal and business. I mean, we're all guilty of having a sort of cheeky look at Facebook just to check, I mean, is that an issue as well, that with the best will in the world, we all end up using our business laptops for a bit of personal stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it is an issue, and also other people using your systems as well. If you've only got one system at home and your kids want to use it or your partner wants to use it, so yes, it's important to separate that whole work home life kind of thing. Now, there are ways you can do that with software. Generally, it's a good idea just to basically not let anyone else use your company laptop, but you can put controls on there to make sure that people don't go to bad sites. You can put content filtering software on there, but it is definitely a security issue. Yeah.
Okay. Of course, I realize my employer's watching this, and I was just talking hypothetically. So anyway, Okay, well, I think we need to get to the meat of this conversation. So, Philippa, what, as a small business owner, can I do to protect my business? What should I be doing?
Sure. Now, a really key point I want to make as today is that cyber incidents, cyber attacks, data breaches, they are happening right under our noses all the time. There is no way you can completely stop it, and you can't completely lock the bad guys out. And if you have something that somebody really, really wants, they will be patient, they will be persistent, and they will prevail in the end. But there is no shame in getting hit, but just as long as you have your baseline cybersecurity in check. And, as I alluded to before, it's not the nation state attackers, it's your very, very low level bunch of kids in town per se. And when we think about the very baseline of cybersecurity, we are looking at using password management, using a strong and different password for your email. The National Cybersecurity Centre recommends you use 3 random words. So, for example, lorry, blind, carpet, for example. Throw some symbols and some numbers in for good measure. Two-step verification, also known as multi-factor authentication or 2FA. This is the single most important thing that you can do to secure your accounts. So your email account, your online banking does it already, but really think about those important accounts that you use. And as a default, if you can enable multi-factor authentication, do it. So that adds an extra layer of security for very little effort. So think about your authenticator apps or the codes that you can get sent to your mobile phone. So therefore, if somebody does have your username and your password, they're not going to be able to access your account because they haven't got access to your mobile device or the app that you use to authenticate. So it's that third level of authentication, really, really important. Backing up your data as well. I went kind of going back to the start. You can't be blackmailed by ransomware if you've got a backup of your data. And again, it's really important to do regular backups of your data, be it in cloud services, hardware, be it a USB or external hard drive. But always make sure once the backup is finished, you need to keep it separate, remove it from the internet, and keep it separate. Because if you get hit and it's connected, then chances are your backup's going to get damaged and encrypted too. And again, going back to the hackers who are exploiting software vulnerabilities, update your devices. We all know around the 2017 WannaCry attack against the NHS back in 2017, and I say that it was against the NHS, it wasn't against the NHS whatsoever. So what it was a vulnerability within Microsoft operating systems, and really sadly, had these machines been updated with the patch, or it's a process known as patching or the update, which actually is that you can actually set it to automatic, so you don't even have to think about it. The NHS estimated a loss of around £92 million, and then you can't even begin to imagine, that amount of money. It's absolutely staggering. But the really sad thing, it was actually avoidable. So, had they just update and patched their operating systems, they could have saved themselves, a lot of money. So like I say, they are the really, really basic baseline things. They're not complicated. They're actually really easy to implement. And the National Cybersecurity website it's an absolute treasure trove of free advice, guidance, and interactive cyber plans, etc. So, Tim, do you want me to run through that now? Have we got time? If not, I can, ensure that the link goes out afterwards.
Well, I am conscious of the time.
No, that's fine.
I'm sure that we can provide the link
Yeah.
in the on-demand version of this webinar. So, Patrick, I'm assuming that most of the viewers watching this webinar are small business owners, and by that I really mean micro business owners with 9 employees or less.
Yeah.
Let's assume the worst, and my business has been hit. One of my employees unwittingly opened a link. We've been hit. What can I do as an owner director to train staff in how to react, if we've been hit by a cyber attack?
Yeah, so I have a small slide on that, slide number 5, we can show it to the audience. So I always try to think what you can do before it happens, And of course, the staff readiness is key. And the absolutely fantastic news, as we just heard as well, is that there are many ways to be ready for it and to actually avoid being hit. It's like if you think you have a thief in the street, this thief is going to try, assuming he's not a very sophisticated thief, which is the case for most hackers, as we said, kids who use very simple tools. These people will try to target the houses which are the least protected. Even if you have just a camera system outside or a little alarm, most thieves will try to avoid these houses because it's too complicated. They are lazy. They don't want to take a risk. So same thing for your network. You can spend a little time on it, and the first thing that will need to be done is assign someone to be in charge and to be accountable to look at your security and prepare your business to be ready for it. And this someone could be yourself. If you're a very, very small business and you have only you in the shop that you think could do that, do it. But you absolutely have to have somebody to do that. And then you have to create a plan that will look at all the risks we talked about and keep it very simple indeed, because people won't have the time to think about it too much during their day. Everybody is very busy. They are not even used to this approach of cybersecurity. So you really must create something which is simple to think about and simple to implement, and still good enough for the 80%, 90% of the risk, which is fantastic already to deal with. So keep it simple and short. You need to, of course, train your team regularly, and of course new employees as well, because everybody forgets. Again, it's not something they think about every day. They think about selling every day. They don't think about the hidden cyber thief that they will never see. So because you don't see these attackers, you need to remind your team and you need to remind yourself that because you don't see them, they're actually the biggest threat. And because they are the biggest threat, you need to remind people all the time, once a year at least, on what to think about. And then you also need to create a plan, not just to be ready for these attacks, but to monitor your system periodically. As we also heard now, is about patches, about antivirus. Are they up to date? Are all the system with an antivirus and a firewall when they need to be? And finally, you need to assign a budget. It's not that it's expensive. It's usually not expensive, but you need to have a budget dedicated, and you need to install, I wrote here, at least firewall and antivirus on all the devices that you have in your network, at home, at the shop, or different shops if you have them. And if you do all these different steps, probably you did already quite well. And again, this is not a lot of work. This is not a lot of money. Every small business can do that, certainly. And what to do if you're attacked? Then if you did that and you have a plan, you will do quite well, because you will have a backup, because you know what to do in case something happens, because probably it will not happen to you in most cases, because you have these different plan of actions to prevent the low-level attackers to come to you. And indeed, they will not come to you because it's already too complicated. You have some security. They will see that, by the way. One of the first things hackers do is they check what is the type of security you have into your router, into your system. And based on what they see, if they see it, not sometimes they cannot see it, but they can see that you have a protection, then it's already more complicated for them. So
Okay.
spend the time to create this plan, make sure that it is implemented, and no less important, think about the risk you have, not just for your business, but if your supply chain is attacked because of your lack of security, what are your legal risk at this level? And I cannot hide and stress enough how much you could be at risk as a business if your suppliers, upward or downward, are damaged by your business. And I believe most companies do not read the contract they have with their suppliers, but most serious suppliers, if not all suppliers, will have actually very specific requirements for your business to be secured. And if one day something will happen, this clause will take effect, and you could be, not because your business was actually, you lost maybe $1,000 or $10,000 in your business. Imagine that one of your suppliers lost millions of dollars because of you, and in your contract, you were supposed to have at least a firewall on your devices. What could be the risk for your whole business going forward? So it's quite important to have a plan and to have somebody in charge of this plan and plan of attack. And
Okay,
defense.
that's very illuminating, Patrick. Now, I'm aware of the time. What would be the one piece of advice or the one point you'd like to get across to small business owners watching this video about what they should do right now?
The one thing, should I answer right now?
You go
So I
ahead,
want to
Patrick.
take it since I was you there, but for me, the one thing I think is the most important is to have this one person responsible and accountable for having a plan and having the responsibility to protect the small business. If you have this person, and this person is serious enough, of course, then you are in good shape. He will make sure that there is antivirus, there is backups, but the small things that needs to happen that are not too expensive, that don't take too much time, and that are so powerful actually will happen. So that's my piece of advice.
Okay, and Paul, what would be the one piece of advice, or the one thing that you'd like to get across?
Accept the fact that humans are always going to be, people are always going to be your weakest link. You know, humans are only human. They have this positive trust bias, so you can't fight it. Acknowledge it, accept it, plan for it. As Patrick was saying, you test, you train, you test, you train. You have to basically try and shift that mindset away from trusting that, you know. So when that email comes in with that, you know, that vitally important email attachment that has to be paid, or the link to the invoice that has to be paid, change that mindset so that the initial urge isn't to click on it. It's actually to stop and to think and to, you know, to basically be cautious about it. It is really, really hard, but if you do it often enough, it's like times tables. You know, I'll always know that 6 6s are 36. If you do it enough times, you will actually get that muscle memory in there, but it is really hard.
Okay. And Philippa, what's the one thing that you'd like to get across to small business owners watching this now?
I'd really like to, the one thing that I'd really like to get across is that your business email account needs to have a strong and separate password. Like I said, made up of those 3 separate words with symbols and numbers in it. And do not reuse that over any other account, and enable multi-factor authentication on that. And then, you know, you're incredibly resilient to anybody getting in.
Okay,
I
short,
just want to add
sweet.
something here, because I love what Pip said. I think the multi-level authentication is probably the best advice anyone can get. 2-step authentication can absolutely save your business. It's
Transform
gigantic.
it.
Absolutely.
And it's free.
And it's free.
Okay, so I don't know about anybody else, but I feel both terrified and reassured by what we've heard today. I want to thank our panelists, Patrick, Paul and Philippa. I think this has been a great webinar, lots of really useful, actionable advice that you can use to protect your small business. So I'm just going to finish by saying thank you for watching, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.